After some grinding and getting rid of some of the Bondo that was on here, we've revealed, so we're on the right side rear quarter here. Let me get you oriented. There's the front of the car. Right side rear quarter. I've cut up here. This is a patch I made, welded in. I didn't like how, when I ground it down, I got it too hot and it warped the panel, so this is coming out. So I cleared out the Bondo through here. We have a similar situation to our driver's side. This entire panel's been brazed on by somebody all the way up to here. Nice thing is they kept it close up here. They came out into the panel a little bit out here. This section here, I think you can see it, has just been beat to death with a hammer to get it to fit right because they welded it on wrong. So they beat it in, filled it up with Bondo to make the contour. What I'm going to do, come back in here along this line, along their original weld line, and remove that brass with a grinding wheel so that this fender becomes loose, so I can adjust the gap back here between the hood and the fender. So when I do that, I'm going to take a look at the situation down in there, and if I need to cut some metal out, do something, I'll do it at that point. I'll straighten all this metal out. It'll take a little bit of time, but as you can see, it's probably a 2-inch piece. So if I can get something back in there behind it, sometimes that's not too hard to beat those dents out. Hopefully I can smooth this over. There's probably close to a 1/2 inch of Bondo, or maybe not 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch of Bondo in this divot and this one over here. There wasn't too much up here. It kind of stops about where I stopped grinding. So that tells me this part is probably original and unmolested. And then, so we'll get that all done, get this cut out, hopefully adjust our fender, start welding things back together. I've completed my cut here. So this cut goes up here, follows this brass that was in here all the way up the side. I stopped about right in here and left this attached. I just wanted to get the brass out of this part so that I'd have something to weld to. I just want to weld this up. It was kind of half done. So now I've got this fender nice and loose. I can pull that gap as big or as little as I want. We'll get it set in place, get all this under here gapped out properly, and once that is where it is, we'll kind of have as you can see, a pie-shaped gap in here to fill in. I've got a piece of sheet metal made for this right here, so when I get this where I want it, I'll lay that piece of sheet metal over here, mark it all out, cut this piece out how I want it, weld everything back in. That should make this panel pretty firm where I want it. Then I'll probably come back in under the wheel well, make a couple tacks, make our patch panel back here, and we should have a nice solid fender. We're moving along here on our rear quarter, driver's side, passenger side, right side of the car. You can see the gap that we have here after we cut it and arranged the fender where we needed it is, it's not quite a 1/4 of an inch, but it's pretty wide. I went ahead and tacked this in here and here. I cut a hole here so I could access the back of this so I could straighten this metal out. I've done a fair amount of that already. You can see it's still got a few lumps in it, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was. How did I do that, you might ask? I've got a big clamp here, and it comes in really handy for stuff like this. You can actually open up the clamp, stick it in, and you can push just by putting pressure on here. You can push on the back side. I can see in there just well enough to know if I'm in the right place, and then I can also push, I'm pulling up with my hand here. I can pull up with this hand, and I can take a hammer and hit down on this panel, and that'll slowly pull up these low spots. It's working pretty good so far. Usually I like to get a little something more substantial back in there, but that may be all I can get to. I don't have a fancy stud puller or anything like that, so that's what I do. Back here, I've settled on a 0.23 inch gap, so that's what I set back here. You can see it kind of widens out as it goes up, so I'm going to have to cut along this line up here move this in and put some material back in here. But this is a .23 gap all along here. So I've got this gap set, I've got this lower gap set, and I'm going to start welding this panel back together so that we hold that .23 down here where the hood comes in, and then as we come around the corner, I'm going to try and pull this in. Hopefully I can get that all set at a .23 and it'll look nice and even all the way around. I'm sure when our paint gets on there and everything else, we'll have less than .23, but for now that's where we're going to start. Alright, we're back here. This is the bottom. This is the bottom of the passenger side rear quarter. Looking at the front of the car up there, coming back, rear wheel is here. So just wanted to show everybody what I found here. I don't know if this camera can really show that or not. We've got a good, I don't know, it's deeper than my thumb is, patch of Bondo here. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but it looks like there was some kind of repair made here, and instead of just making the metal flush and welding it up, they decided to put a big dent here. I haven't even gotten to the bottom of the Bondo yet. I just figured I'd turn on the camera and show you what we're doing. But if you remember right, we have the hole in the bottom here. I got a piece of metal that I bent over on my bench vise with a piece of solid steel that I think is an inch or inch and a half radius. Look like radius that meets this. So that's going to get welded on the bottom here, and we have another spot to take care of. So every time we take off a little paint, we find something more fun. So here's the piece that had the little bubble in it. You can see the big hole there where the Bondo was. That was just completely full of Bondo. They didn't do any metal work. So this has been cut off the car. When I cut this off, I found some damage back in here. So I went ahead and cut our metal up a little higher here, and I've saved our piece to weld back in, or I can use this as a template to fabricate another piece. So I've got to fix this piece first, then I'll put back the skin. Alright, we've got the inner piece welded on here. I got to grind down the welds. You can see I've already started to do that. So that's there. We've got our piece here. Our old piece fits right over there. Looks nice. I've got to trim off this back edge back here. Once I get the fender all ready to go, I'll trim that to size and then weld the fender to it. Okay, this is the poor man's shrinker. I've got my bolt here. It's a 9/16 inch bolt that I cut a slot in. I use that to, let's see here. I put it on the metal and I turn my wrench, and it creates these crimps here which pull the metal up so that it dishes. And then I come over to my handy dandy planishing machine here, and I'll put it in at an angle like this and trap all of these tucks, and then I'll work the tucks out and it'll be shrunk. So here's what that looks like. So there's that. It takes generally a couple times of doing that to get a good shrink, and then I'll go back in and straighten all this edge out, fit it up to my panel, and see where we're at. I've decided to do this patch down here in two pieces. The first one being the simple piece, which is just a straightforward bend that'll go up under here, and I'll have to deal with the lip on the front end. And then the second piece is back here where we have the compound curve, and I've got my piece that I banged out on the planishing hammer, shrunk the edges a little bit, stretched the centerpiece. I've got it cut and getting ready to cut the body here and start welding this piece in.